Hey everybody, welcome to our first edition of the 4th and Long Fantasy Podcast. We're testing something out here, something new feature this year. We've done power rankings, Facebook pages. We're close to having an annual GM's meeting in Miami, so we thought we'd give a podcast a try. So I'm your commish, Screaming Beavers, Brian, and with me on our first podcast is, of course, our co-commish, Jägermeister's Randy. Randy, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you? Football's here, man.
Yeah, 2018, it's back. Everything's looking good. We've had some good games. Interesting weekend to say the least, both in real football plus fantasy. And I think we've got a couple topics here we want to share with the lads.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
Let's get started whenever you're ready.
So, Randy, what's your looking back on the week? What would you say for fantasy wise here was your best game that you thought throughout our league? Obviously, we have 12 teams, so there's only
Yeah.
six matchups. So, what do you think was the best game?
Now, my favorite one I had is you can probably take a clue from the matchup of the week that I put on the Facebook page there. Is that was global warming versus Shelley told me to.
Really?
Now, of course, I like this one mostly because it was a close game. It was also very high scoring, but it was the closest game of the week, only 7 point differential, and it actually kind of, it was close late as well, and there were players late, so it wasn't. I know you probably think maybe the game you were in, was because it was the highest scoring, but I liked this one just because it was close and it was two pretty solid teams going at it as well.
Yeah, overall they both have what look like pretty decent rosters on paper. Now, I know global warming has some key bench guys that I know he's looking forward to coming back with Alshon Jeffrey and Mark Ingram, but
Okay.
obviously they're not available for week one. I think what really hurt global warming here right out the gate is his boy wonder from last year, Kareem Hunt, only put up 4.9 points. So normally he was about a 15 to 20 point guy last year. So already you could have probably toppled Shelley told me to.
Yeah.
But what's more interesting is the amount of points that Stafford actually lost him.
Yeah, exactly.
If you think about it, he had 4 interceptions, and I don't know how many times he was sacked. I want to say 2, maybe 3. But
Yeah.
every one of those misplays is minus points. He finished with 14. So already with a loss of 7, who knows what that could have done, and maybe pushed, dare I say, almost a tie.
Yeah.
But
We don't have ties in this league, do we?
not, well, only if you're the Screaming Beavers and Texas Walker, you have a tie. But I think all in all, now I said what I said about Kareem Hunt. On the flip side, Shelley told me to had Leonard Fournette, who left the game early.
Yes, exactly.
And that's a huge blow. Hopefully everything's all right with him, because he will be a stud for Selby's team. But 5.5 points only leaving. That's interesting to see where that plays out. But no, I don't mind your pick for the best matchup. I think things were pretty close, pretty par, and it could have gone either way for sure.
Yeah. Was that your pick as well?
Well, I'm going to be a little biased on the first one, and just hear me out. I'm going to have to say that Screaming Beavers and the Bears matchup was my best matchup of the week that I thought. Um, who would have thought Deshaun Jackson would put up to almost 27 points?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
I,
There were a lot of surprises in that game. The only reason why I didn't pick it as the top, before I let you continue, is just
Yep.
that I didn't feel that, frankly, that you had a chance. Pretty much by the time Sunday night rolled around, I figured you did have a chance. Now, your Sunday night and Monday night guys put up a good fight, but just the fact that you did that well in those last 3 games and we're still 10 points short, I figured the result was never really in doubt, and that's why I left it off as the best game. But it definitely was a high flying game.
well, and so you're right. You are alluding to an 11-point loss basically. But what's interesting is where I thought I could have made headway leading into the latter part of the football weekend was I did not anticipate Chicago to do what they did.
Exactly.
And I was actually thinking leading into that game that, yeah, Mac's going to make a difference, but I still thought with Aaron Rodgers and what they put around him this year, I thought for sure they would have beat up that defense and potentially maybe only had like 5 points. I mean, they were projected for 6. So
Yeah.
you bring that down by almost 10, things get interesting. Um,
Mhm.
but again, LaShawn McCoy, and we're going to touch on him later. 2 points as a running
Yeah.
back is very against Baltimore, which I don't think their defense is that highly touted, but
No.
I just think Buffalo's offensive line just was absolutely atrocious. So
Yeah, and they were obviously victimized by Peterman's multiple interceptions and the fact that they fell so far behind in that game. You abandon the run once you get to a certain point, and then and then they put the rookie Josh Allen in, and yeah, exactly. McCoy wasn't gonna be involved unless they got down on the goal line or something like that after a certain point because they were so far behind.
yeah, no, and I knew Kamara would do what he did, but I mean, 34 points, that's more than a lot of quarterbacks got this week. So,
Oh, for sure.
yeah, Kamara's a great keeper, and just seeing what, he started a rookie in the flex. And Barkley, who obviously being a Giants fan, I'm happy to see him do what he did. But I mean, again, you don't know what a rookie does, and then he gets you 18 in his first game. That's you got to be happy. You got to be happy if you're the Bears there. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then I can also see where you might think that game produced the number one and number two highest scoring teams for that week, and by quite a large margin. Like I think the next best one was like 127 or something like that. So you guys really lit it up. It was a real track meet out there.
yeah, and that's it reminds me of when I played global warming last year in the playoffs. It's like there's no way on any day of the week when you put up 130 plus. You should win 9 out of 10 times, and this is just that one where I didn't get it done. So hats off to the Bears, and we'll see what week 2 brings us here. But we'll move on from the best. If there's always a best, there's always a worst.
That's right, and I think we probably agree on this one.
I'll let you start us off then.
Yeah. So my worst game was obviously the Misfits versus the Old Dirty Bastards, and this, contrary to what I had just said about the best game, this was the lowest scoring game. It wasn't the farthest. It wasn't the farthest spread, but it was just the kind of thing. Like there was not very much to cheer about for this team. Even if you've got two teams and one does really well and one stinks, at least you can say you can get excited about the team that did well and some good scores, but there was nothing. Like I think the highest scoring player on either side was Dion Lewis at 17 points for Misfits, but his defense got him -3, which is especially for me as a defensive guy, is something that really turns me off as far as a matchup goes.
Yeah, no, and that's who I have as well. So we might as well just talk about this as one big whole here. Problem for the Old Dirty Bastards was obviously you got Wentz on the IR still, who was a keeper, but a late round draft pick with Roethlisberger makes a big difference, but only 12 fantasy points, right? That's not where you expect a guy like that to be against Cleveland. And you can say what you want against the Browns, they're not as the hype is not proven yet, and Ben should have produced a little bit better. And on the other side of the ball, Misfits went with Watson, and me personally, I have Watson in another league. I played him as well. I think that was a right play. I mean, they only were down by 7 at the end of the game. But when you look at Misfits' bench, Phillip Rivers, and I think we talked about this actually at our draft night, he's a guy, he is a guy who nobody really picks, but he puts up massive fantasy numbers every year. And he had 35 on the bench. Now that has to hurt, but I think hindsight's 2020, and I still think Watson, you got to give the guy a chance because his numbers last year were just amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And I mentioned as much when I did the rankings too. Like I think Rivers probably also didn't have the best of matchups, at least for this week. But he still played well. It's just the kind of thing. As far as the Big Ben one, I didn't watch the game, but I watched the highlights, and I know at least in overtime when the Browns were missing that field goal, it was raining like hell out there, like it's raining as bad as it is right now outside. And that probably affected Big Ben's game too, and was probably the reason why Connor did so well on the ground. We can talk about him a little later on when we get to the player categories, but that's probably a good reason why Big Ben didn't have a good game, was because of the weather. And it's really hard when you're doing fantasy to kind of pay attention to the weather, but if you're 100% certain it's going to be a monsoon, you might want to leave your wide receivers and quarterbacks if you've got better options. Now, you may not have a better option, but that's the kind of thing you have to take that into account as well. But it's not always the case. Good quarterbacks can still play well in the rain, but if it's real torrential, it's really tough.
That's an interesting point, and a lot of people, myself included, don't always look at that weather. But again, I guess that's why we're here and not there. But that's definitely an excellent point to look at those options when you're setting your lineup. Another interesting fact here on this matchup is both you look at Freeman for Old Dirty Bastards there.
Mm-hmm.
Did you watch? You obviously watched the Thursday night game.
Yes, I did.
He should have been punched in twice in the first quarter.
That's right. Yeah.
And I don't understand how they don't create that gap for him to get in there when they're inside 10 yards and he doesn't get in twice.
Yeah.
So now he leaves with an injury, and Jake is left with 5 points. Now he leaves with the injury regardless, but he punches in. That's now another 12 points plus probably 2 for the yardage. That's like another 14 points. Now it makes his 74 88. You're almost into the 90s. Still not up in the upper echelons, but it's more of a respectable spread than just 74. And now the question is, moving forward, how's Freeman's hamstring? Is he going to be handcuffed now? And then when you go to his bench, TJ Yeldon actually had he got that one touchdown, but he had a couple good plays. So I don't think he's going to be hurting in the running back moving forward. Obviously, you'd like to keep Freeman, but again, we're getting into that injury category in week 1.
Yeah.
So, so those are kind of our recap on the matchups. We'll be doing that each week here. Obviously, the best and the worst. So, if you want to be talked about the best, get there. If you don't want to be in the worst, don't be there. So,
if you don't care what we think, well, you're not going to win any championships.
That's right. So you alluded to player categories. So also what we're going to do here, Randy, if you want to explain it to them, we're going to talk about fantasy players of the week. So who do you got? Do you got 1, 2? How many you got? And can you explain who, what, and why?
Well, very interesting you asked me how many, because I actually had Patrick Mahomes in, but I scribbled him out. And I put in Aaron Rodgers instead. Now, I know Mahomes got more points, but he did not win the game for his fantasy team. Whereas Aaron Rodgers, for the Texas Walker Rangers, he snatched victory from the jaws of defeat, both in his actual NFL game for the Packers and in this 4th and long game, snatching victory from my team, from the Jägermeisters. 3 touchdowns is pretty good for a quarterback. He's not the only one to do that, though. 286 yards is not that much, but it's the kind of thing where his 29.9 points effectively canceled out my 2 best players. And if your quarterback can do that for you, you got a good chance to win, because that means that they now have a single player advantage, just numbers-wise, over the rest of mine. And I think I also mentioned in my rankings that when that game on Sunday night started, I only had about a 20% chance of winning, because Rodgers was the only player left in both matchups, and he was expected to get at least 20 points. Well, then he leaves the game, and suddenly my percentage goes up to 98%. And I'm thinking I'm on easy street, and then he comes back, and that percentage goes down and down, and eventually he gets that 3rd touchdown, and there's no way I can come back because I don't have any players left. So that's what's funny about how that went from bad news to good news to worse news all in one game. And that's why I got him as the player of the week, because it was literally back and forth, and that one guy essentially lost me that game.
Interesting. Yeah. So if, before we go on to maybe honorable candidates, I'll just throw my player of the week in here. And this might surprise some people, but I think global warming will be happy with this one.
Yeah,
James Conner from Pittsburgh.
yeah,
We all know Le'Veon Bell and his contract issues. We don't need to get into that. But the
hmm,
fact that he can come in the position he does, yes, it's against Cleveland. But again, this is a divisional game right out the gate where Cleveland, the hype is real. So again, they might be trying to change the mentality of opponents coming in.
right.
But the fact that he's able to go 135 on the ground with two touchdowns and 57 yards out of the backfield. And again, you alluded to earlier about the weather. Well, yeah, Le'Veon's your golden pony, but you must feel good to be Pittsburgh if you know this guy's capable of doing what he can do, like right out the gate in the season. So I think
Yeah.
Pittsburgh's going to be okay, and I knew there was opportunity for him to get in, but me having Brown as a keeper, I thought Brown would have got more touches, but again, the weather. So my player of the week is James Conner from Pittsburgh.
And that's a very good pick. I like that, especially doing so well in the first week, and now the coaching staff is going to be so pumped. They're going to have so much confidence in giving him the ball for the even for the rest of the year. So he'll just even if he doesn't get those numbers, he'll get more touches throughout the season than he would have otherwise. He's not considered a liability anymore. So, those extra touches alone will be worth a few more yards and maybe a few more touches on the goal line or in the red zone. Suddenly he gets more touchdowns, so he'll end up being very valuable. And like you said, going from a relative nobody to all of a sudden he's worth keeping around.
Oh, absolutely. And my two honorable mentions are actually both in the quarterback position, and
Okay.
I have one, and we talked about I talked about him on the bench for the Misfits. He has the other one. Honorable mentions for me tied would be Drew Brees and Philip Rivers. Now everybody's going to say, well, yeah, Drew Brees is Drew Brees, but the fact that again he comes out and busts over 400 yards with three
Yeah.
touchdowns and only one sack, like those are unreal numbers. Yes, they
Okay.
lost, which doesn't make sense how Fitzpatrick can do what he did, but that's for another topic. But the
Mm-hmm.
fact that, again, you're throwing over 400. Now, then you go to the other side of the country, Philip Rivers puts up 424 with three touchdowns, one sack, and one interception. So, a lot to be said when your quarterbacks are getting you plus 35 out the gate. If that pattern can continue for Rivers, I think Misfits is going to have a difficult decision on his hands.
Mm-hmm.
Me with Breeze, I feel confident with him going into next week against Cleveland. But they're my honorable mentions for players of the week.
Yeah, those are very good picks. I would especially agree with you on the Breeze side because the way that defense looks in New Orleans, they'll be in a lot of shootouts, and Breeze is going to have to throw the ball a lot to even make it close. And he's got the weapons, and he's not too old. I believe he hit Ted Ginn also had a very good week,
Yeah,
but
he did. Yeah.
that was a result of Drew Brees having the confidence to throw to him, and yeah, having Kamara, who's also very good catching out of the backfield. Oh yeah, Brees he'll be a good pick for you all year. Even if New Orleans doesn't win a game, he'll get you the yards because that defense can't seem to stop anybody.
Who did you have any honorable mentions this week? Any other guys you looking at?
Not in particular. I had a couple others. Like I said, Patrick Mahomes. I had crossed him out. 4 touchdowns and one sack. There was a lot of hype about this kid when they were getting rid of Alex Smith. And man, he looked every bit of what he was supposed to be. Still a little bit of a question mark because he's a rookie. You know how I always turn away from the rookies. I always like the veterans instead because at least I know what I'm getting. But man, what a debut for him to have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, again, we're kind of flip flopping categories here, but we all know that there were some players out there who pissed some GMs off this week. So, we'll move on to the bust of the week category, and for me, I hate to do this to global warming, but hands down, I spoke about him earlier. To me, the bust of the week is Matt Stafford.
Mm-hmm.
What transpired against the Jets is absolutely poor football decision making on his part. Now, if you were fortunate enough to watch the game, they freeze panel a lot of the plays, right?
Yeah.
And you can look, like, the windows he was throwing them in made no sense. They have double coverage all night. I mean, his offensive line didn't help him out either, but holding onto the ball way too long and then last second forcing a play. And again, I I still think losing your week one matchup by 7 points when you know he threw the ball 4 times for interceptions and was sacked a couple times, could that have alone been the difference maker? I think so. So it's got to be Matt Stafford for me. And I know global warming might be looking at some quarterback decisions.
Okay, yeah, that's a good pick. Mine is also a quarterback for my bust of the week. It's Derek Carr.
Ooh.
Now, the main reason why I did this, not only because, when I was making my rankings, I usually start doing them right around halftime on Sunday night because most of the players have played, but, I don't want to do it all Monday night, especially with 2 Monday night games this week.
Right.
That's a lot of work to do all at once. So I kind of give it a start, and because they were playing the last game this week, the Raiders were, I had to leave Kelly's team and the Devil Raiders until last because there were so many players that he had in that game. He has 3 Raiders starting that week. So, I still wasn't sure if he'd win or not. So it kind of gave you the idea of, okay, his team took you this far, and these last 3 players would decide whether he wins or lose. And Derek Carr played very poorly, but not only that, his poor play affected his wide receiver, Jordy Nelson.
That's funny. That's funny you bring him up because he's my. He was a name I was going to throw in quickly. Was a lot of hype for the debut, switching teams with a great quarterback in Derek Carr. But that's funny you say that because Nelson's on my sheet as well.
Yeah, and I kind of had on here that he had a chance to catch Allen if Carr gets about 20 points, maybe 20 to 25 points, which is good but not great. And if Nelson gets 10 or 12 points, if they get that many points, suddenly he's right up there and he's right caught up to them. But that didn't happen at all.
No.
Lynch still did okay. I think he still reached double digits. He was fine. But yeah, when you've got that quarterback wide receiver combination on your fantasy team, it will either double your joy or it'll just add to the pain that much more, and that's what happened this week with him, and that's why my bust of the week is Derek Carr.
Well, that's kind of our summary of Week 1 matchups. So, obviously we know Week 1 is in the books now, both in Fantasy World and I guess in our podcast now. So, predictions for Week 2. What matchup are you looking at? What do you like out there for matchup-wise? What do you think is going to be one to watch fantasy-wise?
I actually like a game you're going to be in. You're Screaming Beavers against Global Warming. I actually think you guys match up very well, especially at the wide receiver, running back, and flex positions. And not only do you match up well, evenly wise, but you got a lot of good players in those positions. But where you've got the advantage is that your defense is like head and shoulders above Ryan's. I don't think it takes a genius to see the Rams have a way better defense than the Saints. So I'm actually going to give the Screaming Beavers the edge in that matchup, and I'm very interested to watch that game.
Well, yeah, it should be a good one. I mean, those GMs do have some history, and global warming does have a better track record, so it'd be nice to pull out that win. I did lose Week 1, so did global warming, so obviously somebody's got to win this week. So we'll see who gets it done. For me, I was debating between 2, but then I came across some interesting things here, and I mean, it's a little early for Week 2, injury report-wise, so we'll wait and see. But for me, the matchup of the week, I think, is going to come down to solely one position and who plays and maybe who doesn't, and how their waiver or bench slides in, is the bottom feeders versus Shelley Told Me To. Okay. Now, they're only separated by about 5 points, but massive beasts questionable. Leonard Fournette and David Johnson.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see who gets in. If they both get in, then, I mean, we're going to have a good matchup. If they're both out, it's again going to be interesting. I mean, you got potentially Duke Johnson Jr. on the one side,
Yeah.
who is going to go up against the Saints defense. Now, we'll see how well that plays, but he's not bad, and he's getting the ball a lot for Cleveland. On bottom feeder side, you got Rex Burkhead, maybe Breda from San Fran, perhaps. But Burkhead is questionable as well, so we'll see what happens with Johnson. But I think only 5 points separating that with two elite running backs questionable should make for an interesting fantasy matchup.
Oh, I like that. Do you have any other predictions? I've got a pretty bold prediction I wanted to mention before we moved on.
Sure.
I predict the Misfits will beat the Devil Raiders next week.
Ooh, a bold prediction, do you?
Yeah, I believe Deshaun Watson will bounce back, and I believe the Chargers defense will also bounce back. They'll play much better this week. They have a much better matchup this time around. And the Devil Raiders, of course, I just finished talking about Derek Carr. Even though Kelly, at least as of this afternoon when I checked, he is benching Jordy Nelson, but he's still got Carr and Lynch in. They are playing a very tough defense, and Gronk is also playing a tough defense. Now, of course, Gronk can beat tough defenses, but if those three guys have poor weeks, it's going to be pretty tough for Kelly to make up ground in other areas.
Interesting. That's an interesting decision. I noticed that as we're doing this podcast live, that the Misfits actually has Rivers as the starting quarterback as of now. So we will see what happens there. But yeah, an interesting take there. I think all the matchups, actually, if you look at all the matchups this week, they're all fairly close. So I think anything can happen here. And there's a few boys that are trying to prevent themselves going from 0-2. So we'll see how many of that will actually take place. We have two matchups actually where two people are going to go 0-2.
Yeah.
Yep. So it should be an interesting week too for there. Any players you're looking to absolutely destroy fantasy wise this week?
I'm looking for I'm looking for Roethlisberger to bounce back, and I'm also hoping and praying that Matt Ryan bounces back. I think he will. That was a pretty tough defense he was playing in Philly on the first game of the season and so on. But I think that this Pittsburgh-Kansas City game is going to be quite a bit of a shootout, and I think Roethlisberger is going to have a good bounce-back game because it's going to be a shootout.
Interesting. Yeah, I think he has no choice but to. I think he knows he has to get. Well, I mean, they tied, right? So you got to get that win under your belt here because that tie can come back and haunt you, especially in the rankings here. Yeah, I mean, for predictions of good players, I mean, we could talk about a bunch of quarterbacks. I'll tell you who I think, but I know I have him and he's on the bench. I think Eli Manning is going to play better than I think he did, and I know he's playing Dallas, so he will step up. I think Eli Manning's going to have a good week. Now he's not projected to get a bunch of points, but I don't know. Something's telling me I think I'm looking for him to bounce back because all the pieces are there now. So if it doesn't work this year, then the problem is Eli.
Right.
They started to beef up the offensive line, although still not solid. They bring in the running back. The wide receiver core is all healthy. Everybody's there, but the ball's not getting there. So I think you can look for him to step up because in that division to go 0-2 is never a good thing.
Right.
But
especially Washington won week 1 too.
Oh yes, exactly. So I think you can look for that, but also the other side of the thing is I think Zeke is going to have a big game.
Okay.
I really do. He's done well against the Giants. I mean, projected for 17. I think you're going to look at about 24. I think is where I see him.
I like the sounds of that.
Well, and it hurts me to say that, but I mean, he's always had good numbers there. And I know their offensive line is kind of depleted. They don't really have the wide receiver core. Dak's kind of in a bad headspace after week 1. So you just go back to your comfort, what you know, and Zeke's right there. So I think he's going to do 100 and I think he's going to go for 102 with 2 touchdowns. That's what I think.
Oh, well, like I said, I like the sounds of that, especially for my chances of not going 0-2 to start the year.
Yeah, and you have him there, so it'll be interesting. But what do you? Is there somebody that you just don't like the matchup they're about to go into?
Yeah, someone I don't like, and I don't even know if he's been picked up. Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think this was a one-hit wonder sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
He was playing a very weak defense in New Orleans, and this week he gets Philly, and Jameis Winston is back on week 4, so it's pretty much the only game he has a half decent chance left is Pittsburgh, but I think Pittsburgh will get things righted by then. So yeah, I think so. Yeah, like it looks awful enticing. His whatever 40 or points or however many points he got, it looked really amazing and a big shocker to beat the Saints. But that defense, like the Saints only had a half decent defense once, and they won the Super Bowl with it. Ever since then, their defense has been average at best, and most of the time below average. And this year's no different.
Yeah, and I got 2 actually, and unfortunately they happen to be on the same GM's team. So if you're listening out on West Coast time, man, Bear Pig, I think you're in for a few shitty options come this week. One, Tom Brady, they won 27-20 over Houston. They're playing Jacksonville this week, and I know Jacksonville is going to be thirsty for a revenge game.
Oh, you know it.
So I think that Tom Brady, although projected for almost 22, I don't think he's going to be near there. I think he may be around 15. I think he's going to be sub projections this week for sure. So if he has another option, I'm not sure, but I don't like the Tom Brady pick this week. The other one that I mentioned obviously is on his team as well, is Jimmy Graham against Minnesota. I don't see it. I just don't see him getting much. Maybe I'm going to say 50 yards. I just don't see them using it. That Minnesota defense is too quick. They jam up the middle. Their cornerbacks are fast. They plug on the red zone. I don't see Jimmy Graham getting those touches. And again, Aaron Rodgers, we don't really know if he's 100%, do we?
No, well, he's definitely not 100%, but, he says he's going to play, but Mike McCarthy is not really, well, obviously he's tight-lipped on it. Their coaches, that's what they do. They're tight-lipped on injuries, especially to their quarterback. But the main thing is, he was throwing purely on arm strength the whole second half, right?
Right.
So, the Minnesota defense is going to key on that and know that he can't put a lot of zip on the ball. And if he tries to put zip on the ball, it might affect his accuracy. So, they're just going to play as tight as possible. They're not going to take too many chances. They may blitz a guy here or there. They might blitz a safety like Harrison Smith once in a while because they figure the wide receivers are never going to get a chance to get to the safety area of the field as long as they get pressure on him, because they know that he can't scramble away and move the pocket very well. And if he does, he risks, hobbling on it and falling over or hurting himself even more. I mean, I don't think, even if Rodgers plays, he'll just stand in the pocket and hit short passes, and you can defend that pretty good. And that Minnesota defense is good to begin with. Yeah,
no, I definitely agree. So that kind of closes our predictions for the week. We talked about some matchup predictions. We talked about some individual players. But let's just flip the script here. And Randy, let's just close another exciting week of NFL football. As you know, we're all here. We enjoy it. What game are you looking forward to catching, or do you got a couple you're looking to watch?
Well, I alluded to it earlier when I kind of mentioned that Roethlisberger was going to come back. I'm looking forward to the Pittsburgh-Kansas City game. Like I said, I think that's going to be a shootout. As much as, what I said about Mahomes earlier about him being a rookie, and I don't know if he can repeat that kind of performance, but he's got the weapons to do it. And, he's got the running back to help him out. He's got the wide receiver. He's got the tight end, although Kelsey didn't have a great game. He's got all the tools that he has there. And Pittsburgh clearly has all the tools on offense. The defenses are probably pretty good for both sides. They're not dominant, but they're still pretty good. But those offenses are just too good. I'm really looking forward to seeing that, not just from a fantasy-wise, because there are a lot of players in that matchup, spread all out the 4th and Long league, but also just from an NFL standpoint, because it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, no, that should be a good game for sure. For me, I think the AFC champion is coming out of this Sunday at 3:25 in the afternoon, and I think it's going to be either New England or Jacksonville coming out of the AFC. So, like I said, Jacksonville, a little bit of disappointment last year. They had them up, and Tom Brady closed it out. This offseason, you have Jalen Ramsey talking trash against Gronk, and we're gonna see who can back up what here. So, I know the Jacksonville defense is legit. I mean, they beat the Giants, but again, from an NFL perspective, not my own, but from a perspective that really Jacksonville should have won the game. They should be 1-0. That's on paper. So they are. So now they go and they'll play New England, and we're going to see what that Jacksonville team is really made of. Now the key is going to be if Fournette plays. If he doesn't, that's going to be very interesting. But again, that defense can do some pretty magical things. So I'm looking forward to that game. And just a side note, we have another rookie quarterback starting this week in Buffalo. Josh Allen will get the start.
That is right.
And he's playing the Chargers. So good luck to him in his NFL debut. I don't see it going well, but Buffalo did very poorly, so we'll see if they bounce back. But that Chargers team is pretty legit too. So.
And I guess, do you have any other games you want to watch other than the obvious one, which I'm gonna get us started on if you don't have any other ones?
No, that's
okay, well,
yeah.
Now we can drop our professionalisms now, and we can be the totally biased ones that talk about the game we're really interested to watch, and that's the Sunday night tilt between the 5-time Super Bowl champion Dallas Cowboys and your New York Giant losers, whatever they're called.
Yeah, I've had the privilege of watching my team win 2 in my lifetime. I don't know if you were able to ever watch one, maybe in the early 90s, but you were probably cross-eyed like a wombat.
Well, watching Emmitt Smith run all the way to the end zone that many times, it's easy to get cross-eyed.
Well, it should be a good tilt. I mean, again, divisional teams, Sunday night in the spotlight where they should be, both 0-1. Both good running backs now, finally. We're going to find out. I think it's going to be close. So do you want to put a little guess on the score here? I'll even go first for you. It's in Dallas. I think the Giants win 20-17.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Yeah, that still gives Zeke his 2 touchdowns. So yeah, that's okay with that. My prediction, I think, it's a home game. I think the Cowboys' defense is better than obviously the passing game is the weak point now. And I'm still heartbroken over Witten retiring, but I think the Cowboys will win 27-20. Like, it'll be close.
Okay, yeah, no, that's respectable.
But I'm also interested. What do you think the over/under is? Who do you think Collinsworth will say is the best young running back in the league more often? Will he go back and forth between Zeke and Barkley all night?
Well, I'm just wondering how many times he's going to say, "Here's a guy."
He's a football player.
Yeah. Or I'm not sure what a catch is now.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I think and this is the beauty too. Finally, the Giants with a running back, with Zeke being so young in his career. Mm-hmm. It's going to be nice if those guys do stay healthy and with those respected teams for a while. There should be some good rivalries for in the seasons to come. So.
That's right.
Well, that I think unless you got something else itching to say here, I think that's kind of the end of what we have to bring to the table today. Anything you want to add?
Nothing too particular. Just that I hope the guys like the rankings and the matchups of the week. I'll continue to do those throughout the year. I enjoy doing them, and I actually like reading them myself afterwards too to see if I made any sense. So.
Yeah, no, I think the power rankings are a good key feature. I know a lot of guys like it. Again, for those, if you're choosing to sit down and listen to this for, what are we at now? Almost 40 minutes. Well, thanks. I mean, we're just trying to do something different for the league. We thought we'd test it out. We enjoy this stuff as well. So hopefully you guys do too. And I'll try to get it uploaded and get a link to you guys so you can follow along with our league. There's also the potential, if any of you are enjoying this or want to shoot the breeze, we can always do teleconferences or bring you over and do some live additions to our podcast as well. So we're always looking for more, and here we are with 4th and Long. So week 1 under the belt. Looking forward to week 2.
All right, I am definitely looking forward to week 2, hoping to get in the win column.
All right, that's it for us, and good luck to all the GMs out there this week. Take care.
Have a good week, guys.